Hey guys, Tiaza here with freebalanceclasses.com. So today's video is going to be an important one. I believe it is. And it's going to be all about the common mistakes dancers make or students make when they learn the figure eights. And the figure eights, there's obviously so many, so of course the mistakes you'll be making in different types of figure eights will be different. But these are the ones that I observed just from teaching for so many years and watching others trying to learn the moves, what I thought were the most challenging things, and also why they were challenging and how to fix them. Okay, so let's talk first of all about the Egyptian figure eight, which is the one that's like side, up and down, side, up and down. Okay, all right, so the number one mistake a lot of people make is, first of all, they push their hips out too much. You don't need to be pushing your hip out too much. Okay, if you have small hips, you don't need to be looking like somebody else. You never need to look like somebody else. Just because you watch somebody else's hips are so wide and they move out so far doesn't mean you have to do the same thing. Okay, so work with your body and go as far as your hips would allow you. Now, how do you know how far you can go? Well, you go as far as this by keeping the upper body straight. So if your upper body starts to drop down and the shoulders start to drop down, just to push that hip out, you're going too far. So just slide your hip to the side and then slide the rib cage just a little bit to the side, but your shoulder, the opposite shoulder, so if you push the right hip, the opposite shoulder will be your left, should still stay straight. If it starts to do this and drop down to the side, you're going too far and you're going to look ridiculous. So don't push your hip out too much, okay? The second mistake is people, when they do this kind of figure eight, the Egyptian figure eight, all they focus on really is like the hips, because that's where you see it. But the fact is, the movement doesn't just come from your hips. It actually comes from your knees, and it comes from your heels, you know, your feet, lifting the heel and dropping the heel constantly. So there's this constant motion. I'm going to back up here a little bit so you guys can see my feet. But when we do figure eight, there's this constant alternation between the heel-toe motion. So let me show you here what I'm talking about. Basically, when you push your hip out to the side, okay, your foot should be still flat. But when you bring your hip out, your hip doesn't come out by itself. It doesn't come up by itself. You lift it by lifting the heel. So you gotta lift that heel, okay? And then when you bringing it in, you're still staying on your toe. And then when you switch to the other side, that's when you drop this foot flat. So now I'm on the other side. I'll do exactly the same thing. To lift the hip, you gotta lift your heel. And then you bring it in and then flat as you switch to the other side. Okay? So key here is, remember that you don't move the hips from the hips, you move the hips from the feet. Okay? So don't just focus on the hip motion. That's the second mistake I see. The other mistake is like being a little too choppy in the movement. And that's understandable when you learn, okay? This is a slow move, and slow moves are challenging, are much more challenging than faster moves, in fact, because you have to make them look smoother. And making a movement look smooth is not an easy task, let me tell you that. So, the important thing here is don't make one side faster than the other, or don't have this like kind of motion. Think it's a circular motion. It's okay if you're still learning to do that, but once you've repeated it so many times, keep in mind that your goal is to eventually make it look like a smooth circle, okay? Now, the other thing, even when you start to do a smooth circle, the other mistake I see a lot of students make is that they will go really slow on one side and then fast on the other. It's like, I got it started, okay, I got it, now fast on this one. It's like, no, you gotta keep the same speed on both sides. And the way to do that is simply by keeping a good count. So count really steady, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep the count, don't lose it, and start and moving, 1, 2, 3. And just kind of really close your eyes and feel, you know, feel the rhythm, feel the count, feel the speed, okay? It's not all about how it looks in the mirror all the time, okay? So those are some of the common mistakes I see in figure eights. Of course, the arms, you know, is a big one, because sometimes you just see people do this when they learn. Okay, totally fine. That's not a problem. But once you got past the hip and footwork, please add some arm movements, because otherwise it's not ever going to look good, all right? When it comes to Mayas, same exact thing that I see is people try to push the hips out too far. Don't do that. A Maya is actually much smaller than the Egyptian figure 8. It doesn't require you to push the hips out too much, so it stays right here. Okay, so the hips, they go out a little bit, but not as much, all right? So don't push the hips out too far, because your upper body needs to stay straight, okay? If you start to do this, you know, you're doing it wrong. Second thing I see also is same thing as with the Egyptian figure 8. The focus is a lot on the hips when it actually should be on the footwork. And I broke down all this stuff for you before, but let me break it down again one more time very quickly. We're starting with the lift in a Maya. So you get a lift by lifting the heel, okay? So the heel's got to come off the floor. Then you push the hip up a little bit to the side, and then you drop it, and then flat. And then as you drop this foot flat, the other one automatically goes up, and then down, flat, up, down, flat, up, down, flat. So the lift in the hip is not coming from the hips. Again, it's coming from the footwork. So focus on the footwork as much as you focus on the hips. The other thing too is about speed, okay? The Mayas are not as complicated when it comes to speed as the Egyptian figure 8s. You know, it's really hard to go too fast on one side and too slow on the other side in the Mayas. It's a lot easier to keep him going. And the reason behind that is because when you lift the heel, you can only keep it up for so long. You know, you eventually have to start dropping it because you feel like you're losing your balance. And so that kind of forces you to drop the heel down faster, and then you do the same thing on the other side. Whereas with an Egyptian figure 8, it's easy to just hold the hip up forever, you know, so you don't lose your balance. So your body dictates the speed when it comes to Mayas more than the Egyptian figure 8s, okay? But the thing with Mayas is you can actually go fast or slow. It really is up to you, okay? So don't worry about how fast you should go. Just focus on the technique, because they're gonna look good no matter whether you go slow or fast. What really dictates the speed eventually is the music, okay? So those are for the Mayas. Front back figure 8s. Front back figure 8s, I think, these are the ones, front and back. So you push the hip forward and then you slide back, push the hip forward, slide back, okay? So these guys. The number one mistake I see people making these is moving the upper body with the hips. You should never move the upper body with the hips when you do figure 8s, okay? So if your hip is going back, don't start turning with it, okay? Try to always keep the upper body straight and let the hip go opposite direction. So see how I'm keeping my chest forward even though I'm pushing the hip? And this is good because it really does work your ab. You know, you need the upper body always go in the opposite direction of the hips to work your abs. Otherwise, you know, you're not really going to feel any muscle in your ab working. You know, it's just going to be more of a mechanical movement. Okay, so make sure you always keep it. And then same thing, you know, when we take the front foot or the front hip here to the back, I'm still going to keep my chest straight forward. So try to keep the chest forward all the time. And sometimes it helps to just take your hands and hold yourself here. You know, it kind of gives you a sense of direction, like keep this here and just focus on the hip. And looking at yourself in the mirror would help a lot too, of course, because you really want to see your chest forward all the time. So that's one common mistake I see, is the upper body rotating with the hips. The other one too that I see is people locking their knees, and you're not going to be able to get the hips to move if you don't bend your knees. So always make sure you bend your knees. And I really like to think about it like my legs, my entire lower body is really, really heavy and just dropping to the ground. So just let everything go down and just really feel heavy with it. And don't ever lock your knees, and then work just from the hips. You're going to find that your knees are going to follow whatever you want to do with the hips. So don't think about the knees even though you're bending them. Don't make the focus on the knees, but you have to bend the knees. If you don't, it's not going to work. And I don't mean a little bend. As you guys saw, I was going a little bit far down. So really go down, but as long as you're not obviously squatting halfway. So that's a common mistake, is people lock their knees too much and then expect the hips to move, you know, nice and flowing. It's not going to happen unless you bend the knees. And then the same thing, of course, for the back front one. You know, same mistakes happen. you know, it's basically the same figure eight, just a different direction. Upper body should never go with the hip, and you gotta bend the knees here. That's key. Okay, so those are just some of the common ones that I see a lot of times people make, and like if they fix just that one little one, then everything else, you know, just looks so good, and then they feel good about it, and they practice even more, and then, you know, and then the improvement is big. Okay, so hopefully you guys find this helpful. If you have any more questions, and you maybe follow the advice in this video but still can't figure it out, let me know on freeballedanceclasses.com. Post a comment below this video, and I'll be happy to answer them. I'll see you guys next time on freeballedanceclasses.com. Make sure you check out the website for the breakdown of all these different figure eights that I just explained to you here. If those are still not making sense, make sure you post a question here, and I'll see if I can help you guys figure it out finally. All right, I'll see you next time, freeballedanceclasses.com. Bye.